This is the 2021 Ford Edge SE, and it's the entry trim level for the Edge lineup. Steve here, Cars with Steve, and before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to Yorkdale Ford for giving me access to this vehicle to shoot the video for you today. Check down in the description below to find their contact details. Now, the Edge SE is an excellent option when it comes down to getting a good car with a nice amount of cargo space, good dimensions on the inside of it with a nice amount of power. And the reason why is because this thing is powered by a 2-liter turbocharged engine. On top of that, it's available either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, but let's dive into it, have a little bit of fun, and see what the Edge SE has to offer. Starting off, looking at some exterior styling of the vehicle. So the wheels themselves are going to be an 18-inch tire, and that's going to be standard on the SE lineup. Now we also will have this rim. That's going to be the standard rim across the entire lineup as well. Looking at the rubber, it is going to be a Michelin tire. As we move forward, we've got LED headlamps, but one thing about the SE trim level is that we don't have fog lamps. So if you're looking at those lamps, you're looking at extra packages, other options instead. Taking a peek underneath the hood of the Edge SE. So this thing is powered by a 2-liter turbocharged engine. From a power perspective, it's going to be able to push out 250 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. So plenty of power when it comes down to it. Nice look as well. Now when it comes down to it, we also have easy access if we need to top up some fluids. We can easily check our oil, and we've also got easy access to the battery along the right side. Filling up on gas is a very straightforward process. Along the driver's side door, we've got a little cutout there, and it's a capless system. So just fill up. When you're set to go, click it in order to lock it back into place. Now, when it comes down to fuel quality, regular 87 octane is the minimum manufacturer's recommendation. Do you need to use a higher premium fuel? Absolutely not. You can just get away with regular 87 gas. Now, having said that, if you use a higher premium fuel like an 89 or a 91, you're absolutely going to notice a better performance. Now, the reason why is because those horsepower and torque specs when we got underneath the hood, those are achieved using a premium fuel. So do you need to use premium gas? No, but you'll get better fuel mileage and better power out of it when you use that higher octane instead. Looking at some exterior styling of the vehicle. So we do have our Edge badge along the top, more in line with the styling of the new Escape badge that came out last year as well. So it's nice that they've got some continuity inside of the lineup. Taking a peek at some standard technology, we do have our backup camera. We've got the reverse sensing system. There's the blind spot system, lets us know if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. And then there also is the lane keeping, so lane keeping and lane centering system. Taking a peek at the key fob of the vehicle. So as you can see there, we've got our Ford logo in the back. We've got our unlock and our lock button, as well as our horn or our panic alarm button. Now along the very bottom, we also do have an emergency access key. So if we ever need to get inside of the vehicle, we've got that flexibility. Now, two things to point out. This one does not have the trunk release, and it also doesn't have remote start. We do have the flexibility of being able to remote start directly through our cell phone though, using the Ford Pass app. So we can't remote start directly through the fob. If you want to remote start through the fob, you could look at a little dongle aftermarket directly through your Ford dealer in order to be able to get that installed. Now, in order to be able to get inside of the vehicle itself, so inside of the SE version of the vehicle, it is a manual process for the liftgate. So we've got a little handle there, there's a button. We're just going to press it in order to unlock it and then bring this thing up. Let's have a peek inside. All right, so cargo dimensions for the vehicle are going to be showing up. So as you can see there, a good amount of width and a good amount of depth. Now it is a 60-40 split for the vehicle, so 60% driver, 40% passenger, so we can fold down one side or the other if we'd like to. But look at the difference in the actual cargo dimensions and the depth there as we fold both of those seats down. And like I mentioned, we do have the flexibility of folding down one side or the other. Now, as we start to move forward, so a few things to point out there. Along the right side, so as you can see, we've got a little pocket there, so we can store some things. We also do have the option for a privacy shade, so as you can see there, we do have the cutouts for it, and we can also install a cargo net if we want to. So we've got clips on both sides. Moving down a little bit, we do have a little bit of storage space, and then we've also got a 12-volt power point in the back here as well. This is going to be the standard cover inside of the SE trim level of the vehicle. We do have the option of looking at a thermoplastic rubber tray. We can do that aftermarket if we wanted to. But lifting this guy up, as you can see, we do have our mini spare tire. So it's an 18-inch mini spare. We've got our little spigot along the side, and then we've also got a little bit of storage space if we need to store some things as well. And looking at second row spacing inside the vehicle. So I'm 6 feet tall. I got the driver's seat set up for somebody who's 6 feet tall, plenty of knee space, lots of foot space. Now up overhead, I've got, like 3, maybe 4.5 inches of headspace. So tons of space when it comes down to it. Now the reason why, this thing does not have that panoramic sunroof. So if you don't really care about sunroofs, that's perfect, because if you've got people that are a little bit taller, I would definitely recommend looking at the option without the roof instead. But one of the nice things is that even if you've got kids that are like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", you're gonna have taller passengers, we've got a little lever by our left-hand side, right side of the passenger. We can actually recline the seat a little bit. So when the seat's fully reclined, up overhead, I've got about 4.5 inches roughly of headspace. So plenty of headspace when it comes down to it. Now, taking a peek at the back of the vehicle as well, just along our side, we do have some cup holders. So we can easily pull that down in order to show them off there as well. Along the driver and the passenger side, we also have a few pockets behind the seat if we need to store a few things. Now, one thing that's different about the SE trim level of the vehicle is that the power points along the bottom. We do have our traditional USB, so our USB and our USB-C, but this thing does not have the 150 watt inverter that we would find in the higher trim levels of the vehicle. Now, taking a peek at the door handle. So along the very top there, we can press that in order to be able to lock the door. We can slide inside in order to be able to unlock. Opening the door up from there, as you can see, we do have our unlock and our lock buttons. We've got the basics in order to control our side view mirrors, window up and down. And we've got a little bit of storage space along the driver's and passenger side door. Moving on the inside, so as you can see, we've got a series of different buttons there. These two are going to control the brightness of the cluster screen, so we can make that darker or brighter. We can figure out what's going on with our running lamps, and then we can turn our traction control system on or off. Addressing the driver passenger seat inside of the Edge SE is going to be a manual process. So in between our legs there, we've got a little lever. We can crank that up to go forwards and backwards, a little old school there. We've also got a manual adjust, so a little knob in order to be able to twist that for our lumbar support. On top of that, we've got one more lever in our back there, and that's literally going to be for the seat, so we can raise the seat up and down as well, which is nice. We've got that flexibility, and a little bit more behind that, we've got another one that we can crank up in order to be able to adjust our backrest forwards and backwards there as well. Now, adjusting the steering wheel inside of the vehicle, it's going to be a manual process, so just in between our legs, we've got a little lever there. We're just going to crank that one down, and it's telescopic, so we go in and out, we go up and down with it. Once you've got that perfect position, click it in order to log it back into place. All right, now, one of the nice things about the SE trim level is that it is push button start. So even in the base trim, we do have push button start, and we do have this beautiful Sync 4 screen that's new for the 2021 model year. We'll get to that one in just a second. But taking a peek at the steering wheel, as we adjust this, 1 second, as this fan is crazy loud. I've got it on the auto setting, that's why, because it is so hot outside today. All right, perfect, there we go, we're set to go. All right, now taking a peek at the steering wheel itself. So the wheel itself has a few different directional pads which are gonna control what's going on with the actual cluster screen. Pad on the left is gonna control that left mini screen. Pad on the right is gonna control the one on the right. Now this is just gonna be a basic quick look at not only the steering wheel and the cluster screen, but also of the Sync 4 media screen. If you're looking for a more in-depth walk around covering off all of the different features you wanna know, check down in the description below because I've put together a comprehensive video. But at least some of the basics. So as we move down, we've got a few different buttons there, and this is going to be for our cruise control. So we've got regular cruise control inside of this trim level of the vehicle, and again, depending on which packages you have in there as well. Off to the right side, we've got our basics for volume control. We can change songs or radio stations, answer or hang up on a phone call. We can mute audio, and then we've also got a button press in order to activate our voice assistant. So voice assistant is actually slightly different in the 2021 Edge, and the reason why is because we've got some flexibility. Like, yeah, we can still make phone calls, we can change radio stations and things like that. We've got a lot more advanced dictation when it comes down to that new Sync 4 screen. Moving up overhead, we've got a button along the very tip of that left turning stick, and that's going to turn the lane keeping system on or off. So that lane keeping system works 3 different ways. Way number 1, if you start to veer over into a lane without signaling, you might get a little bit of a steering wheel shake, almost as if you're running over rumble pavement. Way number 2 is it'll actually gently nudge you back into your lane to make sure that you're not, kind of pushing out into your lane and potentially running into other traffic. Way number 3 is it's going to do a mixture of both of them. So it'll give you a little bit of a shake and gently nudge you back into your lane as well. So great from that perspective. Along the right-hand side, that stick is going to control what's going on with our windshield wipers. We've got wipers in the back there as well. Now, as we look into the center stack, where our push buttons start inside of this, we've got this Sync 4 screen as well. Now, one of the nice things looking at the 2020 Edge comparatively is that this Sync 4 media screen is also going to give us wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So that's really, really cool because we don't have to physically be connected anymore. Now, one thing to point out about that, we do have the option for wireless charging in some of the other trim levels of the vehicle. The SE doesn't. So one thing to note is that, yeah, you could technically still be plugged in, going over Android Auto, Apple CarPlay that way if you wanted to. But when we get into the higher trim levels, we will have the option for wireless charging with the wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. But one thing that is unique about the 2021 Edge also, so on top of this screen, the climate settings, because the climate settings inside of the previous generation they were all tactile physical buttons, but inside of the 21 Edge, everything is now digital as part of the screen. We do have dual zone climate control. We can easily set that up as well. We can figure out exactly what's going on with our fan control. So if it's going to our windshield, face, or feet, it's just done digitally in a much beautiful, like I love the look and layout of this one. It might take a little bit of getting used to, but at the same time, it's not going to be impossible. It's like going from a BlackBerry to an iPhone. You've got that old tactile buttons versus a touchscreen. So it might have taken you a couple weeks to get used to it, but once you do, complete night and day. Now, when it comes down to moving down a little bit, we've got a volume rocker, we've got a tuning rocker, which realistically you could change stations this way, but you can also just use your voice on the and using the voice command prompt on the steering wheel to tune that way instead. So really great from that perspective. Moving down, we've also got the option of pressing a hot button in order to see what's going on with our rear view camera without actually being in reverse, which is one of the nice things. And then down a bit more, we've got some basics for audio control, so change songs, radio stations, play, pause, etc. As we move down a little bit, we do have a few USB ports, so our USB as well as our USB-C. Down a little bit more, we've got a couple different areas that we can use to store phones and things like that, which I think is brilliant design on Ford's part. We've got a rotary dial, so no longer do we have a gear shifter. That went away a couple of years ago, but we've got our park reverse neutral drive and then our sport mode. Now, one of the nice things about the sport mode is that it holds onto the gears a little bit longer, which means that you're going to notice that the engine revs up a little bit higher, giving you a little bit more of a sportier performance. So lots of flexibility there. Moving down a tiny little bit, we do have our electronic parking brake. We've also got our engine start-stop button. Now that start-stop button is the one that's potentially going to kill power to the engine when we come to a complete stop. By default, it's always going to turn back on again. If it drives you nuts, you just have to disable it when you turn the vehicle on. But we can't technically permanently lock it out though. Now, as we move down a little bit, we do have our armrest, and there's a removable storage tray there as well. On the inside, there aren't any power points inside of the SE trim level of the vehicle, so just a little bit of extra storage space. As we move up overhead, we've got a mirror that is not auto-dimming, so we've got that old flip-style tab along the top there, so we can kind of block out some blinding light that we've got going on in behind us. Moving up ahead a little bit more, we've got some basics for our cabin control lighting. And then this one does not have the option for the sunroof, so we do not have that sunroof setting there as well. But up overhead, we do have our sunglasses holder. Moving off to the side, we've got our visor there. So we do have the vanity mirror with the lights, and we can click this out and we can extend it out a tiny little bit if we need a little bit more blockage for sun as we go. All right, folks, now time for the fun part. Let's take this thing out for a spin and see how it handles on the road. Now, this is the SE version of the Edge, so it's the entry-level version of the vehicle. It's literally not going to get more basic than this because this doesn't have any other options. So, I mean, one of the nice things is that we are looking at all-wheel drive. It's got the same 2-liter turbocharged engine that we're going to find in the entire Edge lineup. So really, really nice from that perspective because we've got pretty dang good performance inside of that 2-liter turbocharged engine. Looking at the seats themselves, like I'm actually super surprised that this thing is so comfortable. Like, this is just the regular cloth seat that you're going to find inside of the vehicle. But if you don't care about any of the extra niceties, if you don't care about leather seats, the ActiveX seating material, if you don't need those heated seats as well, this is a good option because you'll have a good amount of space inside the vehicle, good performance, and then with it being all-wheel drive, Canadian winters, that all-wheel drive makes a heck of a difference. You're still going to want to look at having winter tires for better traction as well, but that all-wheel drive system is really, really nice. And a lot of the same technology, so it's just part of the Copilot 360 package. Now, what Ford has done is they've essentially taken all of the basics of the vehicle. So the backup camera reverse sensing system and that lane keeping sensing system, as well as the blind spot system, and they've made it essentially available across the entire vehicle lineup as a default. So whether you're in the SE version of the vehicle or if you're in the fully loaded Edge ST, you're going to have the same basic technology. So those basic things, the backup camera, reverse sensing system, things like that. We also do have that new Sync 4 system inside of this vehicle, which I think is absolutely incredible. Now, one thing to note, inside of this base version of the vehicle, we don't have the factory navigation that's included, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And the reason why is because we can use this thing to connect through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. What that means is that we can use Google Maps, Apple Maps, and Waze directly through this middle screen. So if you don't have factory navigation, not as big of a deal as it used to be because we still have the option of relying on our phone navigation instead. It is a toasty day. It's funny, I was in another vehicle earlier today, and I'm hoping it doesn't happen here, but It's so warm. It's so okay. So it's so warm outside that my GoPro turned off. So the one that I've got mounted facing me here, so warm, the sun's beating down on it, and it was like, no, I don't want to work anymore. It just turned off. So it happens at the end of the day. It's technology. It can only get up to a certain temperature before it tries to protect all of its internal components. And unfortunately, the weather is kind of perfect to make that happen. And this is actually cool because I have not, fingers crossed, I have not really hit traffic as of yet. So that's kind of nice. One thing about the Edge SE, the seats, driver, passenger side, you heard it earlier, they are a manual adjust. So if you're used to that power, you've got to look at the SEL or up in order to be able to get that power seat. Again, you have to be in different trim levels of the vehicle in order to get that heated seat as well. So if heated seats are a must, just knowing you've got to look at other options for different trim levels, I should say. Now, very similar to the rest of the Edge lineup, this does have the sport mode as well in that shifter. So we just have to be in drive, and then we just press the S to get into sport mode, and that literally is going to let us just go. Now, that sport mode, I love it. Like, at the end of the day, sport mode is really cool because what it does is it hangs onto the gears a tiny little bit longer. So what that means is when we go to when the car goes to shift, it'll hold it at a higher RPM. So that's beneficial for a couple reasons. One of the big reasons is because of exactly that added performance. Because when the vehicle revs higher, that means that as you put your foot down, the car is going to go that teeny little bit faster. Now, one thing to note, we don't have the paddle shifters, and then we don't have the flexibility of being able to manually change out the gears in this thing either. So we're essentially locked into whatever gear is currently going on, and it's literally up to the car to decide when it's shifting out. Like I said, in the sport mode, it's going to hold onto that gear a little bit longer, higher rev points as well. So it's going to be a matter of preference. So what I'd recommend is play around with the drive mode, play around with the sport mode, see which one you prefer as you drive, and just stick with that mode as you go. All right, so this is the same 2-liter turbocharged engine that we're going to find in a number of other vehicles. So it's going to be inside of the Corsair, the Lincoln lineup. It's going to be inside of the Edge and Escape and things like that as well. Just going to hold back a teeny little bit, and then I'm going to give it a tiny little bit of gas because this thing isn't broken in yet, so I'm going to be gentle, but let's see how fast it goes. That's all right. As I brake hard, for a 2-liter turbocharged engine, that is pretty good. So one other thing, I've got the lane keeping system, so the lane sensing system turned on as well, and it's turned on just to give me a gentle bump. So it'll work a couple different ways, but what'll happen is once you get up to speed, so you have to be going at least 60 kilometers an hour, and the lanes inside of the actual cluster screen will go green. That lets you know that the system essentially is activated. Now the system itself will activate, but it actually won't turn on until the car hits about 62 kilometers an hour. Like I said, those lanes are going to go green. What is this clown doing? Road rage at the end of the day, it is what it is. So this guy clearly was in more of a hurry to not have to wait in behind 1 or 2 other cars. So nice and nimble at the end of the day. That was pretty cool. All right. Oh, there we go. Okay. So that lane keeping system, I was hugging the right lane a little bit, so it highlighted red, and then it gave me a little bit of a steering wheel shake, and like that thing always, like, it catches people off guard when they feel it for the first time. So it's like, what is happening with my suspension or my alignment? Nothing. It's literally a safety system doing what it was literally designed to do. So if that system drives you crazy, you do have a flexibility of turning it off, and it's literally just a button press along our left turning stick. So, so definitely useful. Like I said, if that feature drives you crazy, you can disable it permanently, temporarily. You can just flip it on and off as necessary. Now, overall comfort, styling of the vehicle is good. We have a lot of the same options that we would see inside of some of the other trim levels. Now, one thing about the base SE Edge, we don't have the fog lamps. So, I mean, if fog lamps are something you absolutely have to do, you're looking at the SE trim level of the vehicle. I mean, it's up to you at the end of the day. We will have the backup camera as well. So, I mean, you've at least got that as an option. I mean, obviously, it's got nothing to do with the lamps at the end of the day, but, I mean, we've got some flexibility is what I'm trying to point out. So, boom. All right, folks, that was a look at the 2021 Ford Edge SE. What did you think? I like this thing. It's a good option if you're looking for a budget-friendly vehicle with a good amount of space inside and in the trunk. If you have any questions, drop it in the comment section below and let me know. And until I see you next time, make sure you stay safe.